So what do we mean by layers, right? Right. So the task I'm going to do is you have to draw a map uh, in your country which represent population by district. So I'm taking you back to your school days. I don't know how many years back that is. Of course, for me, maybe it's just a couple of years back, but of course, Priyanka, it will be like what, 20, 30 years? Yeah, fine. It doesn't matter. So just tell me, how would you draw a population map, right? What are the steps associated with it? How would you start it, right? I want the steps. So tell me, I will be just starting by doing this, and then this, and then this. So that way, I want to know how would you have drawn this population map, population by district map for your country when you during the times that you were going to school. How would you do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to select a small unit. Then we have to fill those population for the smallest unit. Then by collecting number of small units for the higher level, we have to arrange district and region like that.
Okay, Deepal. Let's make it very simple, right? So now you're going to draw a map, right? So what is the step number one? Now you have the data, everything available with you, right? So this part is already done. So what is left is to draw the map. So what is the step number one when you are trying to do when you are drawing the map?
We have to find out the boundaries then.
Okay, so all right. So let's start it from there. You need to find out boundaries. So basically you are going to draw a boundary. So what's the first boundary that you're going to draw in this case? The first boundary that you are going to draw when you are trying, I mean, like when you are trying to draw a map of Sri Lanka with population. Yeah. What's the first boundary that you are going to?
The map of Sri Lanka, the nation's map.
Yes, exactly. So basically what we are trying to do is, right? So now I'm talking not about now this era where we have all the technology, everything with us, right? I'm talking about maybe a couple of decades back for few of you. So how I did was to, like, now the first task was of course drawing a map of Sri Lanka, but that seemed to be a very difficult task for me because like Sri Lanka is not a very, it doesn't have these uniform edges, right? So basically we have to draw something like this, which was a kind of a very difficult task for me when I was a school kid. So how did I do that? I never drew it just by my own. So what I did was I used to either trace this map by, putting one white sheet over an existing map, and I used to trace. That's number one. Or else, in good old days, we had this map papers, which have which gives us the predefined. I mean, like we have the boundary of Sri Lanka, and we can draw whatever we wanted on this one, right? So that was my first task. So the first task was just to draw Sri Lanka. So basically, this what we do, even though inadvertently we did it that time, was in fact drawing the base map. If we wanted to, draw countries by population in a world map, then the base map that we would be using would be the world map, right? So is that clear? So task number one would be to draw this base map, which has the basic elements of geography that and the boundary that we are going to draw the map on. Is that clear? Right. So let us move on to the next step. What is the step number two? Yes, Gan, as I agree with you, of course you can buy it from any bookshop. Yes. So what's the step number two? I have now the Sri Lanka map is there, the base map is there. What is the step number two? Okay, while you formulate the answer, let me try to change my network to a stable network. So give me a couple of seconds till I reconnect to my other network. So during that time, please decide what would be the next step that you're going to do. Yes, what's the step number two? What would you do next? Now you have the country, what is next?
I'm not sure what's the second level of the geographic location in Sri Lanka is. If it's a district, you then draw the district, or if it's a region, you draw the region first.
Exactly, right? So the next is you're going to draw the districts, or else we call it what? The boundaries, right? So that's our second thing. Once we have the base map, the second would be we are going to add a boundary layer, right? So basically we are going to divide Sri Lanka into districts, because ultimately we are going to color Sri Lanka by district. So these will be colored, but before coloring, we need to draw the boundaries of the district, right? So you can see here what we did first. First was to find something called base map, right? So where we have Sri Lanka and maybe a map so that we can start working on. And second would be adding boundary. What's the third step? The third step, of course, is the final one, which is what? They call the thematic, where we
Population.
exactly, where we are actually coloring the map based on the population data that we have received. Okay, is that clear? So how we started off with is with the base map. So basically, I mean, I'm talking about the good old days. Still, it's the same concept that we used. So we found a map, right, from a bookshop, or we traced or something like that. And then on that one, we mark the boundary layers, right, as the second one. And the third one is we actually draw colors on it, right? So in good old days, when we were going to school, we used to do it step by step, right? So when we are trying to convert that to this computer world, in this computer era, right, we call it layering, right? In fact, we, even though we did not realize it as layering when we were actually drawing map, this is what exactly we did. So we had the first layer as the base map, second layer as the boundary layer, and third as a thematic layer, right? So even on those days, we were using this layering concept, and that's exactly what we are going to do when we are developing maps using the maps application of DHIS2. So we are going to use layers. Is that clear? When this is clear, developing a map is very much easier. Okay. Right. So let me start sharing my web browser so that we can discuss about this layering concept. Right. Okay. So what you can see here, right, are the layers. So let me start off by defining the layers that you see in this particular diagram, in this particular map. So in this map, now this is the area that we are defining layers, and how many layers are present in this map? How many are there? And what are those? Any answers?
3 layers.
Three layers.
Three layers are there. Okay, show me the three layers. What are the three layers that you see here?
First one is the base map.
So base map is one you are seeing here. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What is the second one?
The next one is a training land map, the boundary, the training land boundaries.
Yes, but I must say something. Now, when you are using DHIS2, sometimes this thematic layer consumes the boundary layer as well. Because
Yeah.
what happens is, now here you actually can't draw a thematic layer if you do not have a boundary layer.
Yeah.
So ideally we should have added a boundary layer here, but we have not done it. We have just added a thematic layer. So in this case, what is different in DHIS2 is that even though sometimes we do not add an explicit boundary layer, if we add a thematic layer on top of base map, the thematic layer will serve the functionality of both boundary layer and thematic layer. Here. So here we only have two layers in this map, the base map and the thematic map at the thematic layer. And in the thematic layer, it also has the boundary layer incorporated inside it. Is that clear? Right. So let us see what are the other layers that we can actually add in this DHIS2 maps application. So when I click here, add layer, right? There are different types of map layers which we can add, right? So we can add thematic layer, we can add the events layer, we can add track entity layers, facility layers, boundaries, population density, elevation, nighttime lights, precipitation. So there are so many that we can add, right? So here, the thing is, what we'll be mostly using are thematic layers and boundary layers. And when we are using tracker, we'll be also using events and track entities. And facilities also we will be using in some of the examples that we are showing today. So today, of course, we will try with facilities, thematic layers, and boundary layers. But these two layers that we have to show events and track entities, these will be discussed when we are doing actually the level 1 tracker academy, of course, which I think some of you may have already attended, right? Okay. And don't think that these are not important. So for example, even these nighttime lights may be significant. So this nighttime lights layer, what does it actually signifies? Why do we have something like nighttime lights? What does it mean? What's the importance of nighttime lights?
Electricity availability.
Yes, electricity available, and what's the other public health importance of this particular layer? Electricity available, and what does it correlate to?
Maybe it is a cold chain, immunization cold chain.
Well, urban
Uh,
versus rural.
Yeah, so basically what it means is nighttime lights is actually a representation of where actual the human habitats are. So for example, if you apply this layer, you will be able to see like the areas like jungles and maybe swamps, rivers, they will not be colored. So basically nighttime lights will mainly, try to highlight areas where you actually have human habitat. So that's, I mean, so likewise, there are different significance of different types of layers that you are seeing here. Okay, so these are the types of layers that we can add. And then let's just show layer by layer, and we will just show you the layers available in base map. So in the base map, you are seeing OSM, which is OpenStreetMap Lite, right? I just click on it, and then I have OSM detailed, Bing Road, Bing Dark, being aerial. So, I mean, when you just shuffle across these layers, you will be seeing it's actually the visualization that change. So basically the road and the detail layer is a map, right? Whereas if you actually try to get an aerial one, it's a satellite image that you may get. And also you might notice that sometimes for this training land island, especially in OSM Lite, we have these thematic layers appearing here, and our actual base map shows training land somewhere here. So if you, before you ask this question, this is because there is some mismatch between the map's base layer and the coordinates which are there in DHIS2 instance. But in some of the base maps, it won't happen like this. For example, if you use Bing Road, it is not like that. The Bing Road map layer, it kind of overlays nicely with the base map, the thematic map, the coordinates we have in DHIS2, right? And the other thing, the other thing I want to highlight is, in case you don't have the necessary base map that is kind of formulating the background of the map that you are going to draw, you can always add an external base map to this DHIS2 instance. So how to add it, I'm not going to explain in detail, but the instruction on how to edit is available in the documentation, and the option is available in the maintenance module. So in the maintenance module, there's an option to add external base map layers. So basically, when you are configuring it, so let me quickly show it for your interest sake. So you go to maintenance, right? And then not sure for this user that is available. Let me go to other. Yeah, it's there. External map layer, right? So in external map layer, you can add an external map. Let me open up this one that is already added. So you'll be able to see, right? So here we can give a name, and the map service you have to select, right? So there are 3 services which are available, and then you have to define a URL. So basically what it does is it's real-time pulling the map based layers from a available public server, right? So that's what I wanted to highlight. So basically you have to define a URL and a map service, and then that will be available, right? So these are kind of advanced GIS concepts that you might rarely use, but just know if in case one of, some administrator or public health expert asks like, can I embed another layer, external layer? Yes, as a base map, it is possible. Okay. Are there any questions? Right. Google Maps, yes, of course, Sanrada we can use, but like in fact, DHS2 has been using Google Maps in the past. But the thing is, nowadays we are not recommending Google Maps to be used as a base map layer in our instances, because why? Because now it's kind of paid service, right? Only up to certain level it will be free, allowed free of charge, and if you just keep up pulling base maps from Google over a particular limit, then you will have to pay for the usage. So that's why it's not included, but yes, you can do it. So let's try to design one map by ourselves, a thematic map, so that we'll get an idea about how to use the layers. So let me start off by clicking on the maps application here under apps menu. So I click that and I'm here in the maps, right? So the map I'm actually thinking of designing would be HIV tests performed for last 6 months, right? Okay. And I want it to be disaggregated and shown at facility level, right? So that's what I'm going to design. So to design my HIV tests performed map, the first thing I need is a base map. So I'll be using the Bing road base map. I will select this one, okay, right? And then what I do is I will have to let me add a boundary layer. So I will just select boundaries, add layer, and I click on boundaries. And here, let me select the country, which is the training land. I select here, and then I have to select a level. So here, what I want is I want training land to be divided and demarcated and shown in the map as districts. So here at level, I can select district, right? So I have selected training land and district. Done. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add layer, right? Okay, here we go. So I have the layer here, which is the base map, and then I have the boundaries layer. So once I do that, can you see what has happened here? So we have the layer number 1, which is right at the bottom, which is the base map, and on top of that, I have added the boundaries layer. So boundary layer is the layer number 2. And what has actually happened is now the base map is totally covered by the boundary map, right? So whatever in the base map that I used to see before, I cannot see in the, because I have added the boundary layer. Can you see that, right? It's just totally white. So in case I prefer to have at least, some kind of visualization of the base map, right? Even after adding the boundary layer, I can do some kind of overlay. So to do that, what I can do is I can actually change the transparency of this particular layer. So what do I do? Now here you can see in this particular layer, there is an option here, set layer opacity, right? So I can just try to click and drag this. So I'm just dragging it like this and dropping, right? And when I do that, I'll be able to see that, now when I move it totally towards this side, what happens is I'm not seeing any of the boundaries, right? Because it's total transparent. You are not seeing anything on the layer that I have added here. But if I just set it at halfway, I'll be able to see that the demarcation lines here are not that visible. I mean, not that dark. If I just move it up all the way, you'll be seeing it's really dark, right? So that way you can change the opacity by dragging on the handle here, right? Can you see that? Just let me keep it at default level. And now let me add a thematic layer. So I have added a base map, I have added a boundary layer. The next is a thematic layer where I'm actually going to display the data in it, right? So for that one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add layer. I'm selecting thematic, right? And when I do that, I have to define the 3 dimensions, what, when, and where, the minimum, right? So here I have to select under data tab. I'll be selecting what it is, right? So I'll be selecting, because it's about tests, I will select data element, and the data element group will be HIV, right? And then the data element is going to be HIV tests performed, this one. Okay, I'm selecting that one, and then I'm going to period. So the data tab is done. I have selected data element groups, and the particular data element that of interest, and then I'm going to move on to the period tab. So in period, I have to select. So yes, I will go because I wanted to select for last 6 months. So I will just keep the period as relative here, relative, and the period is last 6 months. Is that one? This one, last 6 months, right? And then what I will do is I will just keep it as single, right? I'm not actually going to change this. I will explain more about this in time to come in the next few sections, but for now I will just keep it at single. And the organization unit level, let me do something different. So I want to see how this thematic layer appears by facility, right? By health facility. Now, if you can remember, you know, like when I was talking about the GIS, the coordinates types for district or provinces, these are polygons or big shapes, right? But for facilities, these are individual point coordinates. So let me see how it appears when I try to visualize the thematic layer at facility level. So I'm going to select training land here, right? Here we define the scope, and then I'm going to select health facility. I will deselect region, right? And that's it. I will just keep everything as it is now, right? And then I will just click on add layer. And let's see what happens. Can you see, right? So we have the base map, we had the boundaries so these are district boundaries, and the final layer we added was HIV test performs in last 6 months by facility. So you can see what has happened here. So health facilities are colored based on the legends that has been defined here, right? So you can see if the number of tests performed. Now let us focus our attention on this legend that we see here. If the number of tests performed is very low, like if it is from 130 to 7,532, these facilities will be represented in yellow color, in light yellow color. But if the number of tests are really high, it will be in dark brown color. Any other values within the range, you'll be seeing these colors that are defined here. Okay, right. So let me zoom in and see something else. Now you may be able to see that that the sizes of these circles, right? Ideally, these facilities are point coordinates. That is, basically it has a single longitude and latitude value. But you can see the sizes of these individual facilities are different in this circle. So basically what has happened here is the radius of the particular item that is displayed here, right? It varies based on the value that you see here, right? So for example, you can see for this one, which is Sushi Hospital Gateway, primary health, it has 37,212, and here you are seeing another one, which is Crocodile Hospital, which is 32,250. So basically this is somewhat larger than this one, and especially if you take something like Pineapple Dispensary, which is having 433, the size is very small, right? So that kind of visualization you are able to see in this thematic map that is displayed here at the facility level, right? Okay. And also let me just now, if you are just wondering how these colors are coming, because I did not actually demonstrate to you how it is coming, let me go and edit this thematic layer so that we can customize and explain about this color range a bit further. So I'm going to click on this button here, which is the edit button. So when I click on the edit button, we have already dealt with the data tab, the period, and the organization unit. So let me focus my attention into the styles, right? So in the styles, the first half is about the legends, right? So we can select an automatic or predefined one. The predefined legends, I think even Pramil and Priyanka, both of them explained when they were doing pivot table and data visualizer, that we can predefine the legends, the colors based on particular range or scale, right? So if we have predefined scales that the legend sets are available, we can select, for example, these are the ones that are already there predefined in the system. So we can select one of them. Or else by default what happen is it will just select one automatic uh, color scale, right? So that's what has happened here. And then this legend set, you can select the different number of predefined preset color ramps that are available. So for example, we have a nice mix of options which we can select from, right? So the one that is selected is this. Okay. And let me now explain to you something about this equal intervals and equal counts. So here, when we are defining the number of classes, so let me explain to you what this class concept is. So what we mean by class is if we have the lowest value and if we have the highest value, the difference between the lowest and highest, we call it what? The range. So the range we can divide it into classes based on two criteria. So the two criteria which are available is equal intervals and equal counts. To explain this further about equal intervals and equal counts, let me share another presentation. So here what we have is, like now here we try to explain to you what we mean by equal counts. Okay. So for example, here we have defined the number of classes is 3. So we want to, divide all the values that we are seeing into 3 classes, right? So here we have how many data items? 10 of them are there. And for each data point, these are the values that are represented, right? So we have 1, 3, 2, 6, 2, 9, 8, 2, 10, 7, likewise. So we have 10 different data values. So what we are going to do is we are going to put these 10 values into 3 classes, right? So you can think of them as 3 maybe boxes, something like that, right? If we have 10 values, we are just trying to put them into 3 classes. So the concept that we are defining here is like we are going to use the concepts of equal counts. So what it means is for each of this class, we are trying to accommodate at least somewhat similar number of data values, right? Similar number of values, not, I mean, don't look at the data value figure, but the number. So basically when we have 3 classes, right? We have 10 data values, data items, like we can't actually divide 10 into 3. So the closest way of dividing it into more or less equal number of counts is we can have 4 in one class and 3 each in the other 2 class, right? So what happens is when we adopt this concept of equal counts, it will try to see like how to accommodate the values into the classes while maintaining that all the classes that we have at least somewhat equal number of values inside it, right? So here, now when we try to do that, the ranges will be 1 to 2, 3 to 7, 8 to 2, or 8 to 10, right? So that's what happens when we try to accommodate equal counts. But then look here, what happens is that now the gaps between these are not same. So you can see 1 to 2 is the difference is just 1. But 3 to 7, the difference is 4. 8 to 10, the difference is 2, right? But what we are trying to achieve is that we'll be able to get at least equal number of counts in each of these classes. Is that clear? This will be a bit different to the next concept that I'm going to highlight, but is it clear? Okay, let me proceed explaining the next concept, which is equal intervals. So here, let's see what happens. Now here also, the number of classes is 3, right? The method we are trying to adopt is equal intervals, and the data, it's the same data that we have here. And we are trying to divide this data into 3 by ensuring equal intervals. So because it is equal intervals, what happens is the classification goes as 1 to 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 10. So that you can see that the gap between the upper and lower margins of this each class remains the same. But we are not actually considering much about how many data values will be inside each of this class, because this we are disregarding, because our concern is about ensuring that equal intervals are there based on the topmost and the lowermost values. So when we do that, of course, we will see that 1 to 3 range, we have 5 values. 4 to 6 range, we have 1 value. 7 to 10 range, we have 4 values. Is that clear? There is one comment. Let me check what it is. Yeah. Is there any questions?
Yeah. How come like 7 to 10 classification has 4 values?
Let me see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This comes in 7 to 10. 7 comes in, 8 comes in 7 to 10. This also comes in 7 to 10. And this also comes in 7 to 10.
And
Yeah, Dr. Pramod, what is the advantage equal? We can understand what is the advantage of equal intervals in the classification. What is the advantage of equal count? Is there any
Yeah.
practical application?
So in fact, like I was actually going to ask it in a different way, right? So the thing is, usually, like like for most of the public health examples that we are taking, it's an equal interval that really matters, right? Because equal counts, of course, I actually can't think of a very good example unless, especially in these public health scenarios, unless we have some predefined, say for example, we have a set of, so the criteria is like when we are thinking of equal counts, right? So we want to ensure that if we have a number of a group of patients, we want to divide them into equal, so if we have three, some control or some groups, right? In these groups, we want to put each of these patients, right? So in such a situation, if we want to visualize, give them an idea about, okay, we did this kind of intervention where we had equal number of patients who were there allocated to these particular classes, and this is the visualization based on their geography location. So for that kind of a scenario, we can use. But what I wanted to highlight is where you will be actually using equal counts is very much less in our routine public health scenarios. It's mostly what we are using is equal intervals. Is that clear? Even for this example, I was actually going to ask, let me stop sharing this one and let me share the, sorry, there's a question. What is the practical use? Yes. So the practical use I am actually explaining now. Yeah. So in this scenario, right? So I mentioned one example for equal counts. So for this particular scenario about HIV test performed, which one is more of a use? Equal counts or equal intervals? Equal counts or equal intervals? It is mostly equal intervals.
intervals.
It's more appropriate, right? Because then, of course, we can measure the difference in each scale of the number of tests being performed in each facility, right? Here, of course, what we do is we are checking HIV tests performed, right? So here, like we are not concerned about making sure that each of these classes have same number of facilities, because that's not a concern. We actually want to see that we like if we have the lowest and highest value, and if we are defining it into 5 classes, which are the facilities which kind of really highlights in the map as the facilities which have performed high number of tests. That's what we want to know. So because of that, in this particular example, in HIV test performs, and in most of the public health context, the scenarios that we are using will be mostly using equal intervals. And now another thing I want to mention is, now for example, let me just put it 5 and show like this. Okay, now this is what I see, but let me just reduce it to maybe 3 and show like this. Okay, and then this is what we see. Okay, So this is something for you to get an idea. So it all now this is not really about maps, for you to just get an idea about interpreting results. Now you can see how we can cook data or change the visualization. It's the same data that we are, trying to highlight, but we may be able to generalize the data, the interpretation more if we reduce the number of classes. Can you see? So when we reduce the number of classes, we may be able to accommodate more facilities into each of these classes so that we can generalize. We can actually say like, okay, I mean, more or less it's similar in most of the areas. I mean, likewise, if we want to actually give that kind of interpretation, if that is our objective, then we can reduce the number of classes. But let's see what happens if we actually increase the number of classes. I'm just increasing it to 9, right? And when I do that, I'll be able to, take out few org units and highlight them and give more prominence to them. So for example, I can clearly see this one, the Sushi Hospital Gateway Primary Health. It is the one that is standing out as the highest, right? So if I want to, praise or highlight the excellent work of one institute, this may be a better visualization, right? This is, so I mean, I'm just trying to highlight a particular context where we might, the same data, we might try to visualize it in different ways based on the idea that we want to convey to the audience. Do you get it? You can see right here, we can very nicely highlight this particular org unit as opposed to everyone else. Sorry, I think Varun is answering most of the questions. Thank you, Varun, for that. So I'll be proceeding with the demonstration because we have a few more areas to cover. Okay. So next, what we can do is I can click on File and then Save. Let me save it as a favorite. So please remember, for your exercises and demonstrations, please use your initials when you are saving the favorite item, because otherwise it will be very difficult for us to find, even for you to find it in your instance. Okay. So I will just HIV tests perform last 6 months facility. Right? I just say type that and I click on save. Right, and I do that, I will see that his name appears here. Okay, right. All right. So with that, I think we come to the end of the section on the layers in the maps application. If there are no questions, I can pose it here. Are there any questions that has not been answered? Yeah. Okay, let me.
I think on
Yes,
Slack
Varun.
we've got from Dr. Rohan to please explain the equal counts again.
Equal counts again. Okay, let me share the presentation again. Right, so before moving on to the presentation, let me show it in the layer here, style. So we have, in the style tab of the maps application, right? Now we can define classes, right? So basically the classes mean what we see here. So, if we have the lowest value and the upper value, we can divide the range of values that are here based on different criteria. And how many containers that we are going to put these values is what we mean by classes, right? So first thing is we have to define how many classes we want. So here I will just select 3, okay? And these classes we can define based on a particular classification. So there are only 2 classifications which are supported in DHIS2 as of now. First one is equal intervals. The second one is equal counts. So when we think about, before showing that slide again, if I just explain it simply, when we take equal intervals, what happens is we have the lowest value and we have the highest value. Okay, so here you can see, let me look at the example here. We have the lowest value, which is 113, and the highest value, which is 33,089, right? So we take the difference So that is 33,089 minus 113, right? And then we get the difference, and that difference we divide it by the number of classes we want to have. So if you just concentrate in this one, we try to divide this difference 33,089 minus 113 divide by 9, right? And we get a difference. So this difference should be somewhere close to 4,000, I mean 4,100 or 4,000 something, right? And then when we do that, what happens is we have the lowest value at 4,100, you get this 4,235. And we take this value, add again another 4,100 something, and we get 8,357. We take this value again at another 4,100 something, and we get this value. So likewise, we ensure that between the classes, the interval remains same. And if we just consider these as boxes, we try to put individual values reported by facilities into these boxes. So for example, if we have facility A, which is reporting 9,000, to which one are we going to put that one? The facility A value is 9,000. We are going to put it into which one? 1, 2, or 3? We are going to put it into 3, right? If the facility A is reporting 21,000, we are going to put it into this one, right? So likewise, we are going to put it, but what remained fixed is the interval between each. So that's about interval, right? So let us move on to the next concept, which is the counts. So counts is we check how many values have been reported. Basically, we are only concentrating about the number that appears inside these brackets. Can you see, right? So basically, it will be something around 113, 142, 52, 54, 58, 63, and 66. So it will be 166, right? So this 166, we tried to divide by 9, right? So that when we do that, what happens is we can ensure, let me try to do that, 9 and equal count. So we have 166. We try to divide it by 9, right? So the value that we'll be getting is somewhere close between 15 to 19. So let me just do that and see what happens. I update layer, and you will be able to see nicely. So all these 166 facilities, we have made sure that each of the class has same number of facilities in each of them. Can you see? Around 19, 18, right? So this is what we try to achieve when we put equal counts, right? But as most of you ask, this doesn't really make much of a sense to apply in our usual public health context, the scenarios that we are getting. Is that clear?
Dr. Pramod, I think it
Yes.
may live in one occasion. Suppose we want to find out the number of doctors in each facility. If we put
Number of doctors in each facility, okay.
facility, if we put this sort of classification, we can find the color code according to the number of doctors, no? That categorization. I mean, number 4, number 5, like that.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, okay. So the way you define it, right? I mean, if you just want to see, okay, the same concept, let me highlight. Now you want to visualize number of doctors. So the thing is, if our idea is to see, say for example, if we have about 50 hospitals in Sri Lanka, we want to see, I mean, like, so we divide it based on, say, I mean, we have 5 classes. We want to kind of see what are the hospitals which are having most number of doctors, least number of doctors, like that. Then if we select equal intervals, those facilities which are actually having high number of doctors will stand out. Equal intervals. But if we actually try to make it as equal counts, what it will show is what? So it will show that, I mean, if we have altogether 20,000 doctors in Sri Lanka, what it will do is, it will try to divide it, the number by 5, and try to accommodate into different classes. So what would it represent? What do others think about number of doctors in Sri Lanka? If you want to visualize, what would be the best?
Suppose this way, that some hospitals will 5 to 15 up to 50 doctors in one hospitals, then 100 in other hospitals. Then we can color code it according to the that number of doctors, no?
Yeah. So that you can do. Yes, that's the thing. So I mean, basically, what happens is you will have to explain the context if you are doing that, because usually with data we have some norms. So for example, now I mean, like even so, I mean, so what usually happens, how the human eye interpret is, I mean, true that we have a legend, but what happens is we first, I mean, how our human eyes works is we try to see this and have our own interpretation, and then maybe we will be looking at the legend, right? So if that is the context, if you are defining something special in your scenario as opposed to what we are usually used to see, then it's always better if you define it. So that, I mean, maybe you put a star point and highlight, this is what we are actually trying to show. Yeah. Is that clear? So I think
I have an
that's a-
example to support your equal counts thing if you want.
sorry?
I have an example to support your equal counts part if you
You have one.
want.
Yes, please proceed.
Yes. So in one of the states out here in India, Maharashtra, we've got 35 districts, and the mission director for our health mission, he is mostly interested in seeing which are the 5 most best performing districts and which are the 5 most lowest performing districts. So what we had done on his dashboard is we have actually placed it in a way in which we are having equal counts given to 7 different classes. So 35 divided by 7 is 5, right? So you'll get 5 in each then. So that ways he's able to see with color as to which are the ones which are best performing. That will be highlighted in green, and the one, or maybe some other color, you can choose that legion, and the lowest performing will be in a lighter grade somewhere. So this ways he can then demarcate and then take actions or maybe make his decisions accordingly.
Yeah, great. Nice
Yeah,
example,
exactly.
Varun. Thank you for
Exactly,
that.
Varun. So that is very nice. So that's a very good example where you can use this equal count business. Actually, what is happening, Pramod, isn't it? Now, when we take the equal intervals that represent the true distribution of that specific indicator or data, or else when we take equal count, it will rather not show the true distribution, but it will categorize those org units under consideration. So like if you want to divide into say 3 groups what on their performance, so if you have say you have 15 org units and you for on based on some indicator you want to categorize them into 3 groups, then the most convenient way is to use this equal counts thing, isn't it, Pramod?
Yes, exactly. And just to add on what Varun said, that's a nice example of using equal counts. But also you should make sure that in case if your number of org units are increased, then you will have to adjust your classes accordingly, right? Because I mean, say for example, today we have 35 facilities, and next year we have 40 facilities, but still your administrator will want to see the 5 most facilities. So one example, one fact I want to highlight is, now see, like you have to look at your DHIS2 instance in a holistic way. Okay, I mean, like here we have one example, one requirement by your administration where you want to see the highest and lowest performing 5 facilities. But when you increase the number of facilities in the system, you have to make sure that you also upgrade, you kind of update. You have a look at your favorites, the map favorite, to make sure that it still represents what the administrator wants after increasing the number of facilities, right? So that way also, like now that's another thing. Like when you do this kind of configuration, you always have to see that when you are making another thing, I mean another configuration changed in DHIS2, make sure that it all remains unaffected what was previously there. Okay, right. Fine. So let me move on to the next section.